Ukraine latest, Mariupol siege dwindles to plant Stedman'. Group of 7 leaders pledged to ban Russian oil imports, even as Hungary held out against a European Union energy sanctions plan. The US expanded sanctions on Russia and the UK unveiled further trade measures, including import tariffs on Russian platinum and palladium. President Volodymyr Zelensky marked a day of remembrance for the defeat of Nazi Germany, a day before Vladimir Putin is expected to address a military parade in Moscow and may lay out the next steps of his war. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pledged more military support during a visit to Kyiv. An intelligence officer of the Azov Regiment holed up in Mariupol's massive Azovstal steel factory said surrender would amount to suicide. All women, children and elderly have been evacuated. In the Luhansk area, as many as 60 people may have died in a Russian strike on a school. UK sets third round of Russia sanctions, 11:30 p.m. The UK announced a third round of trade sanctions against Russia and Belarus, taking to more than £4 billion, £9 billion, the value of products subject to full or partial import and export bans. New import tariffs will cover £1.4 billion in goods, including platinum and palladium. Russia is a leading producer of both metals and is highly dependent on the UK as a buyer of its exports, the UK government said in a statement. Trade bans were announced for more than £250 million worth of UK goods that Russia is most dependent on, including chemicals, plastics, rubber and industrial machinery. We are determined to do our utmost to thwart Putin's aims in Ukraine and undermine his illegal invasion, International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan said. This far-reaching package of sanctions will inflict further damage on the Russian war machine. Zelensky calls on G7 to keep up arms supplies, 10:45 p.m. President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked G7 countries for supplying weapons and said they need to keep up supplies so Ukraine can defeat Russia, according to an account of his comments to Group of 7 leaders on Sunday provided by his deliveries of multiple rocket launchers, for instance, would have saved many lives, he told the G7. Ukraine is counting on Canada to help clear mines and booby traps that Russian troops planted in the country, Zelensky said separately in his daily video message. Trudeau pledges more military aid in Kyiv visit, 10:02 p.m. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Kyiv and said Canada will provide an additional $50 million in military support, including drone cameras, satellite imagery, small arms and artillery ammunition. His off. Canada will also continue to help with demining operations, Trudeau told reporters in the Ukrainian capital, where he also reopened the Canadian embassy during his previously unannounced. Trudeau also said he plans to suspend tariffs on Ukrainian imports for 1 year and will impose sanctions on 40 additional individuals and 5 entities aiding the Russian war effort. Mariupol steel plant defenders call for rescue, 9:19 p.m. If Russia's President Vladimir Putin hoped to mark Victory Day on Monday by celebrating the capture or surrender of Mariupol's last Ukrainian defenders, a Zoom appearance by their commanders suggests he'll have to. In an online press conference on Sunday, an intelligence officer of the Azov Regiment holed up in the southeastern port city's massive Azovstal steel factory said surrender would amount to suicide. He said they had enough food and weapons to hold out a while yet. Describing their increasingly grim, and likely ultimately hopeless, circumstances, Ilya Samoilenko also made clear his bitterness with the Ukrainian government. It had, he said, failed in its defense of southern Ukraine, where Russia made much faster progress than in the north, and had abandoned Mariupol's garrison to its fate. Lockheed seeks to double Javelin missile output, 8:03 p.m. Lockheed Martin Corporation is working to almost double its production capacity for Javelin missiles to 4,000 a year, and achieving that goal will require the supply chain to crank up, the defense contractor's topics. The Ukrainian army has used Lockheed's missiles to great effect in destroying Russian tanks and armaments, and the company is ramping up production to ensure the U.S. military's supplies aren't depleted. Right now Lockheed can build about 2,100 Javelins a year, Chief Executive Officer Jim Teichlet said Sunday on CBS's Face. G7 leaders commit to Russia oil import ban. Leaders of the group of 7 most industrialized countries pledged to ban the import of Russian oil in response to President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. The heads of the leading economies made the commitment after holding a video call with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday, the eve of Russia's May 9 Victory Day, which commemorates Russia's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The date has become a touchstone of the Kremlin's campaign to whip up public support for the invasion. The leaders will commit to phase out our dependency on Russian energy, including by phasing out or banning the import of Russian oil, the G7 said in the statement. U.S. sanctions add Gazprom bank execs, accounting firms. The U.S. banned American accounting and consulting firms from working with Russia and added members of Gazprom Bank's board to its sanctions list as part of a package of new penalties. The measures also include export controls on industrial goods, limits on 3 of Russia's top state-controlled television stations and additional visa restrictions. Today we are further constricting Russia's economy and access to services and technology it needs to conduct this unprovoked invasion, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said in a statement listing the measures in detail. Germany's Scholz sets limits on Ukraine policy. Chancellor Olaf Scholz outlined limits on Germany's efforts to help Ukraine in a televised address. While Germany will continue to supply heavy weapons to help Ukraine defend against Russia, Europe's biggest economy won't sacrifice its security or affluence, he said. Read more. Scholz defends Ukraine's stance as voters punish muddled policy. U.S. Diplomats in Kyiv ahead of embassy reopening. Chargé d'Affaires Kristina Kvian led a team of U.S. diplomats that traveled to Kyiv for ceremonies to mark the anniversary of the Allied victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba the diplomats were there to conduct diplomatic engagement in advance of the planned resumption of Embassy Kyiv operations. State Department spokesman Ned Price said. The U.S. initially moved its diplomats to the western Ukrainian city of Lviv in the days leading up to Russia's invasion, then operated from Poland. Diplomats last month started making day trips into Lviv. Russian infrastructure official visits Mariupol. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Markus Nuland, whose portfolio includes construction, visited occupied areas of Ukraine including the recently captured city of Mariupol, according to a statement posted to his Telegram. Nuland, who was sanctioned by the European Union in February for his role in undermining Ukrainian sovereignty, said Russia would help the seized territories rebuild and provide humanitarian support.